Hi, it's Ian, and welcome back to my 30 Days of Knife Skills. This is day 23, and we are working with ginger. One of the most important ingredients in the kitchen, I think. There's so many things we can do with it. It's great raw, it's great cooked, adds so much to dishes there's a lot to do with ginger. So the first thing is you have a big bunch of ginger like this, and we need to separate it. Usually that's the case. And while we could cut it off like this, I think most of us, we just grab it and rip it off. It's one of the easiest ways to deal with it. So I think it's not quite as clean as cutting it, but just ripping it off, I think, is pretty much what we all do. So from here, some people talk about the fact that you don't need to peel ginger, and it's too much work and effort, and it doesn't make a difference. And I'm not sure I agree with that. Maybe the only time I might just leave it like this and chop it up would be to make stock or something where I'm going to strain it out, and we're not going to be eating the final product, or there'll be other flavors and it'll cover up the kind of the earthy, dirt flavored ginger skin. So I'm not sure if I'm more sensitive to that flavor, but I think you can definitely taste it. So I pretty much always peel it. So a lot of people talk about peeling ginger skin with a spoon for safety and ease, and I think that totally works fine. So all you do is take a spoon, this is a teaspoon, and you can see it does a good job of keeping the ginger intact. The skin is pretty thin. There's no danger of cutting yourself, and yeah, it's getting a pretty smooth surface like that. So the spoon method definitely works. I don't usually do that because I don't usually have a spoon right where I'm working, cutting vegetables and things like that. So most often what I might be doing is use the back of the knife. So I think some people say you can just use the blade part, but again, that's maybe a little bit on the dangerous side since you're holding the ginger in your hands. So I think what makes sense, especially a smaller knife like this utility knife, it's a petty knife, using the back of the knife like this to take it off does the same thing as a spoon. Of course, there's these knobs that if you take it off first, it'll be a lot easier to remove all the skin cleanly like that, and then turn it around and continue on to the other side. So the only reason I don't always do this is it's a little bit messy. There is juice kind of coming out and getting all over my hand. So that's another good reason to have a towel nearby. So that definitely works, but a lot of times I might sacrifice a little bit of waste on the skin by first taking off these bigger pieces and any spot that might get in the way, or a discolored spot like that. So let's say I'm going to work with this part here. Instead of going through this process, I'll just take that part off too. I will just use the knife and thinly peel it, and kind of go around like this using the heel portion. It's sort of like that katsuramuki technique, Japanese technique of peeling things like cucumber and daikon. So you can just turn the item and with the left hand while you sort of slightly go up and down with a knife like this, and it does a really good job. It's cleaner, less juice. This hand stays cleaner because it just is on the knife instead of kind of going out touching the item itself. So, and I think it's a little bit easier to work with that way. From here, lots of things we can do. Of course, we could chunk it up if we're going to take it out later on. For example, ginger tea, I might just chunk it up into kind of rough chunks like this, something like that, or like a stock, for example. Thin slices might be good for something where you're going to leave it in. I don't usually work too much with this kind of thin slice going this way, but I think you could put it in a some kind of a salad, or it could marinate a little bit, or if it's in a pickle, if it pickles a little bit, just like the gari, the vinegared thin sliced. It's usually young ginger, but you could make it with not young ginger like this one. So something like that is good because this, I cut it against the grain and it's pretty easy to eat. If I cut it with the grain, so if I cut it lengthwise, then it would be much more fibrous and hard to eat. So that would be for a different purpose. So yeah, I think maybe the only reason I would do this thin against the grain would be maybe for pickling or something like that. But this is still easy to eat. This thickness is a little bit harder to eat. So yeah, I would maybe pull that out, or if it's in a curry or something and it's cooked a long time, maybe it's fine to eat that way. The other common way would be to slice lengthwise, and when I do that, it's nice to have a little flat area like this. So take a little bit off, and then it's more stable, and then have nice thin lengthwise, so the fibers are going this way. It's going to be tough. So from here, we can go into the julienne. This way for some length and still some structure because the fibers are still going this way lengthwise. So I might do this for stir fry, something where I don't want it minced, but I want it maybe a little bit smaller than this kind of round size. So this is something I would definitely use a lot, but maybe this is too big for raw applications. So if I'm going raw, or if I'm going to cook it for a short time, or if I'm really trying to make it incorporated into the sauce, some kind of a stir fry where I don't want chunks, but I want it to be more incorporated, just like if I would have ginger and garlic together, maybe I would mince both very small and then fry it in oil before adding the other ingredients. So in that case, turn it all around 90 degrees, and then go for this very fine mince. Mijingiri in Japanese. Very small, pretty much 1 millimeter or even smaller, these pieces. So it's easy to do that if your initial long cuts are very neat and you can keep them stacked and then turn it around 90 degrees. And then for something like this, it's good to work with the tip portion of the knife. Ginger is fibrous, so it's one of those things that if your board is not flat, or if your knife is too flat, or maybe even has a concave shape on the blade profile, it's very aggravating because it won't get through the fibrous parts. So you can guarantee that you can get good contact with a board by using slightly a rounded part of the blade like this. So that's something this is something I use often. I think this is totally fine raw. You could throw this into like a salad, and it would still be no problem to eat on something small like that. So even smaller would be grating. So usually what I'm doing is either grating on the microplane, just like I would garlic. Very simple. Microplane is great. This is the fine one. It's great because it just is so sharp. And if I'm doing a little bit, it'll just stay here, and then you can usually just pull it off like that. Just scrape it off from the back side and get very, very nice grated ginger, nice and fine. If I do a bunch of it, one thing I'll notice that after maybe another 2 or 3 times that initial amount, you notice that there's fibers that did not get cut, and sometimes it starts to slow down the grating. So I'll just take off a very, very tiny bit of the end, which of course you can cut up and put into something else. Get a nice flat surface, smooth surface again, and then continue. And sometimes I would turn it around and change it so that the fibers are maybe finding a different angle, that it'll get grated by the grater. So this is probably the most common way I would grate ginger. You can also just do it right over the bowl of whatever you're using, or you could keep it on this and put it into the pan like that, or into your bowl, or like I just did just now, tap it off and it does a good job of cleaning it off. So this is such a great tool. Another great tool, I would use this more for table side. This is a ceramic dish that has this texture. I'm not sure where I got this, but it's, I think it's a Japanese style. So it's great to have a piece of ginger at the table like this, and in a circle. In this case also, eventually the fibers will kind of make it fuzzy. I might put it on its side and continue, but this simple tool does a really good job also. It's nowhere near as fine as the microplane, because the microplane, the teeth are much smaller and it's actually cutting, and this is kind of scraping it around. So there's more teeth, or there's more fiber left because there's no teeth to actually cut them here. But this is great at the table. The juices are all right there. Could take a little bit. I would add it to my shoyu and dip whatever you want in it, or put a little bit on your soup or noodle dish. Yeah, this is a great quick way to do it at table side, and you can just put some chunks of ginger out right on the plate and pass this around. Very useful way to grate ginger. So that's pretty much what I do with ginger. It's going to be either chunks where I won't be chewing on it necessarily, or maybe pulling it out. Nice thin slices where it's definitely edible because it's cutting across the grain. Sort of the julienne, and then mince, and then 2 different ways of grating. So many different ways to prepare ginger, so many great ways to incorporate it into your cooking that, yeah, I could not do without ginger. It's one of the best things in the kitchen. So anyway, good luck with that. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next one.